Have you ever looked at the person you've shared a lifetime with and suddenly felt as if you were sitting beside a stranger? Not an enemy, not someone you dislike, yeah, just someone who feels distant. The same person whose voice once brought comfort, whose laughter once filled the air with warmth, whose very presence made you feel seen and alive. And now, there's just quiet. Conversations have become nods, laughter has turned into silence, and that spark that once made you unstoppable together flickers weakly, like an old candle struggling to hold its flame. You still share the same space, maybe watch the same shows, eat at the same table, but something unspoken has changed. You can't name it exactly, but you can feel it in your bones. It's that invisible distance, that silent take that hides behind ordinary moments. Sometimes, in the stillness of night, you find yourself asking, when did this happen? How did our love turn into something so quiet, so unfamiliar? It's not always about arguments or loud disagreements. Often, resentment grows quietly, in the spaces between words that were never said. It takes root in moments where one person stops feeling heard, where appreciation turns into expectation, where care starts to feel like an obligation instead of a choice. This quiet erosion happens more often than most couples will admit, especially as the years go by, and more often than not, it's the woman who feels it most deeply, not because she loves less, but because she's given so much of herself that she begins to fade inside the very life she helped build. But this isn't about blame, it's not about pointing fingers or keeping a tally, it's about understanding what really lies beneath that quiet distance. So maybe, just maybe, the love you built doesn't fade away completely. Because resentment doesn't appear out of nowhere. It begins as exhaustion, as disappointment, as unspoken hurt that piles up year after year. It begins when one heart feels unseen for too long, and if it's ignored, it builds a wall, one that feels harder to climb with each passing day. But the beautiful truth is, understanding what's really happening beneath that silence can change everything. It can bring back compassion, restore connection, and remind both partners that love doesn't have to grow cold with time, it can actually deepen. So imagine this. Linda and Robert have been married for over 4 decades. They've raised children, built a home, faced challenges, and created a life that others would call successful. But lately, Linda feels invisible. Robert is still a decent man, responsible, loyal, dependable. He handles the bills, the repairs, the practical things. But somewhere between all those busy years and the slower ones, he stopped really seeing her, not with his eyes, but with his heart. He doesn't ask how she's really doing anymore. He doesn't notice when her tone softens into sadness or when her laughter disappears. When she tries to share something personal, something fragile, he listens for a few seconds, offers a short reply, and then returns to his phone or the television. At first, she brushed it off. He's just tired, she told herself. He's always been like that. But slowly, she started speaking less. With every unspoken feeling, another invisible brick was laid between them, and eventually, she found herself living beside him, not with him. That's how emotional neglect happens. It doesn't start with cruelty, it starts with disconnection. It's not that Robert stopped caring, he simply forgot how to show it. And this quiet forgetting happens in so many long marriages. As men grow older, they tend to focus on maintaining order, stability, and routine. Women, on the other hand, begin craving something deeper, and not material comfort or big gestures, but emotional understanding. A simple conversation that makes them feel known again. When that emotional nourishment disappears, the heart begins to starve. Slowly, silently. You might not notice it right away, but one day, the woman who once smiled so easily becomes distant. The one who reached for affection stops trying. Science supports this truth. Emotional intimacy is one of the biggest factors in women's happiness as they age. When that sense of connection fades, sadness takes root, and that sadness can harden into resentment. The thought that whispers, "He doesn't really see me anymore." Many men believe being a good provider, staying loyal, and handling responsibilities is enough. But love isn't sustained by duty, it's sustained by emotional presence. It's not enough to share a roof. You must share your heart. A woman never outgrows the need to feel valued, adored, and emotionally safe. That need doesn't fade, it deepens with time. So what can be done? It doesn't take dramatic change. It starts small. Take just 5 minutes each day to truly talk, not about chores or bills or news. Ask, how are you really feeling today? Then listen, and not to reply, but to understand. Sometimes that 5-minute connection can do more for a marriage than all the expensive vacations or gifts combined, because what we all crave most isn't luxury, it's closeness. When that connection fades, even the strongest relationships start to feel empty. But this kind of neglect doesn't make anyone the villain, it's what happens when life becomes a blur of responsibilities and time quietly slips away. The good news? You can rebuild. You can start again. One honest moment at a time. Emotional neglect isn't a death sentence, it's simply a sign that love needs tending once more. In the early years, couples share a rhythm. They move in unison toward shared dreams, raising children, building a home, working hard. But then life slows down, the kids grow up, the house becomes quiet, and suddenly there's space, too much space, silence that feels heavier than noise. That's when many women start to ask, who am I now? For so long, they've been mothers, caretakers, wives, the glue that held everything together. But when those roles fade, they're left with a question they haven't asked in decades: what about me? Meanwhile, their husbands often stay the same, comfortable in routine, content with how things are. To them, life hasn't changed much, it's just calmer. But to her, the quiet feels like loss. It's not only the children she misses, it's the version of herself that used to feel needed and alive. Psychologists call this the empty nest identity shift. It's not about selfishness, it's about rediscovery. But when her husband doesn't understand or dismisses this inner change, frustration grows. She's evolving, searching for new meaning, but he's standing still. That's how emotional distance grows, and not because love is gone, but because the shared identity that once bound them starts to unravel. The U.S. turns into you and me. When one partner doesn't understand this transformation, the quiet begins to hurt. The house is tidy, the dinners are peaceful, but the air between them feels heavy with unspoken sadness. Resentment doesn't always scream its sighs. It sits in the silence between two people who once talked about everything. But this doesn't have to be the end. Marriage is made of seasons. When one ends, another can begin, but only if both choose to plant something new. Take walks together, revisit the places that hold memories, learn something new together. The goal isn't to relive the past, it's to create meaning in the present. Love doesn't fade, it transforms. The end of one season is not the end of the story, it's an invitation to rediscover who you are, and who you are together. But what cuts deepest is the feeling of invisibility, the quiet ache of being unappreciated after years of giving. For decades, many women have carried invisible burdens. They remembered every detail, handled every crisis, and made sure everyone else was okay. And for a long time, they didn't mind. They weren't seeking praise, they just wanted peace. But when the noise fades and reflection settles in, they begin to see how much they carried and how rarely anyone noticed. That realization hurts in a way that's hard to describe. When a person has spent a lifetime giving, only to feel unseen, the ache runs deep. That's emotional labor, the unseen, uncounted work that keeps families together. When it's unacknowledged for too long, it turns into emotional fatigue, a tiredness that whispers, "Does anyone even see me anymore?" Men often mistake that silence for contentment. But silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it's the sound of someone who's stopped hoping to be understood. And yet, healing can begin with something as simple as recognition. Words like, "I see what you've done. Thank you for holding everything together all these years," may sound small, but they carry immense power. Because acknowledgement doesn't erase the past, it heals the present. And if you're that woman, if you've carried so much without thanks, your effort mattered. Your love mattered, even if it wasn't always spoken. What you gave shaped every heart around you. Still, connection requires two hearts showing up. Love thrives on mutual care, not one-sided giving. And it's never too late to start again with gratitude, honesty, and presence. Because in the end, what people want most isn't perfection, it's to be seen, heard, and valued by the person they love.